Hey guys, I'm Maddie and welcome back to my channel. So here on my channel, I talk very openly about my struggles with alcohol and how I have been a month sober. But something that I just recently realized when I was doing some reflection is that when I gave up alcohol, I also accidentally gave up cannabis and using weed. This was not intentional whatsoever. Before I get into like where I am now, I want to give a bit of a background to my relationship with weed and smoking weed, consuming edibles, taking oils, things like that. Growing up, weed wasn't like now. I think the relationship society has with weed is very different than when I was like 16, 17, 18. It wasn't legal yet. There wasn't these massive stores and dispensaries like we see now. It was people growing it in their backyard, or you could find like random websites online that would sell it, but it wasn't as easily accessible when I was growing up. So I never really dabbled in it. Like I knew people who smoked weed. No one in my inner circle or even like outer circle participated in it really. I know my brother dabbled in it here and there growing up, but like I never did it. I had cousins who smoked like out of a bong. That was probably the most common way I saw weed being consumed, was joints or bongs. It wasn't as common to see a dab pen. So when I was like drinking alcohol, like at 17 and 18, I never smoked weed. Actually, I think the very first time I smoked weed was when I was like 17, and it was like a one-time thing out of a bong. I don't even think I really smoked it right because I don't remember feeling high or anything like that. Like I don't remember getting any sort of sensation from it. So I thought like, oh, am I just like immune to weed? Little did I know what would happen next. But yeah, that was like a one-off thing. And then I don't really remember the next time I smoked weed. Fast forward a couple of years, I had this one friend who wasn't a great influence, and she smoked a lot of weed. Like she would smoke weed, do other drugs, and drink all in one, and that just wasn't for me. I just kind of stuck to my alcohol when we hung out, and then eventually got into the drugs, but that's a whole other video. So I remember being at her house and we were drunk. It was the end of the night and she's like, oh, I'm really tired, I want to go to bed. So she took a hit of the bong. She asked me if I wanted to. I said, sure, why not? This, hands down, one of the worst nights of my entire life. I hit the bong and I don't know if the weed was laced with something or if it was just how it affected me, but I literally passed the fuck out and was like puking. It was awful. I was like hallucinating. Like the whole world was like a paint by numbers. It was like a unicorn, like a My Little Pony unicorn in the sky. And it was like paint by numbers and everything was so fuzzy and grainy. It was horrible, and I literally thought I'm going to be stuck like this forever. And like up until this point, never used it recreationally. No one really offered me joints. Like I knew people who did it, but I didn't really look at people one way or the other if they did smoke weed or consumed cannabis. I just thought like, do what you gotta do. Like don't let me stop you. You do you. And like, I know some people have like the preconceived notion about like stoners or potheads being like lazy, which I never had those thoughts or feelings. I just looked at it very neutrally. I just knew it's not something I really wanted to participate in. I, like after that, didn't really smoke weed. If I did, it was literally just weed and no alcohol, and I would use it to like fall asleep. But then I would get the munchies really bad and I would get very paranoid, but I can't really remember the in-between part because I didn't use it that often at that point. Like it was maybe a once a month type thing, no more than that. And then I went to college. I would take an edible here or there, but again, I got paranoid. Like I did not like being high around people. I liked being high by myself, trying to fall asleep, relaxing, because I got very paranoid and I looked at people differently and I just didn't like how I interacted with people when I was high. But then one night got drunk, a guy offered me some of his joint. I said yes and got crossfaded again and was puking everywhere. Like my body cannot handle alcohol and weed at the same time. It does not mix for me at all. So I was crossfaded at a party. My friend had to take me home because I was like stumbling, passing out. It was awful. And I'm pretty sure that was the last time I ever got crossfaded because it was such a terrible experience. And then after that, during college, like my roommate and I would take an edible every once in a while. But again, nothing too serious. And I wasn't never dependent on it. I didn't really like the way it made me feel, really. I liked being tired and I liked the giggles I got from it, but I had such a hit or miss trip or high. Like it was either I was really giggly or I was super paranoid and like sketchy and just did not like how I felt and wanted to go to bed. Like I did not like being high in public and around people. I was very much the stoner who wanted just to be by myself with my snacks watching TV. Anyways, towards the end of college, one of my favorite things to do when I was high was to watch Grey's Anatomy, but try to pick out when it was a green screen in the background. I was when I got high, I could pick up on the little details, and I just like watching Grey's Anatomy stoned. Those are some of my best memories, but when it's literally just me in my bed watching Grey's Anatomy. Like that, I love that, honestly. And then I met an ex-boyfriend and he was a huge pothead. He's what got me into really smoking weed, and that's how we bonded. It's like kind of messed up, but we would isolate just the two of us, sit on the couch, binge eat so much candy and junk food and watch TV together stoned. And it was so unhealthy because I see it now. Towards the end of our relationship, which was during COVID, during the beginning of COVID was when our relationship was ending. So we were just hanging out, the two of us, isolating, and that's when our relationship got really, really bad and super unhealthy. But that's because we were just getting high every night, watching TV and binge eating, which not good at all. And then we broke up, and then I still kept weed in my life as a coping mechanism because I could numb out, but I also got pretty like interpersonal too and could evaluate my life and looked at my life in different perspectives. And I really appreciated that when I was high. It kind of took out some of the background noise for me and I could relax, but that feeling did not last long. It lasted maybe like the first 10, 15 minutes of my high, and then it would go away and I would just like sit on the couch and numb out. Sometimes I had really good like realizations when I was in that little 15-minute blip, but again, didn't last too long. And I think it's because when I would get high, I wouldn't really be on my phone too much. Like I would just be sitting with myself in my thoughts and there was no background noise going on. So I think I am able to tap into that when I'm not high just by getting off my phone. Like, wow, what a concept. Not having external influences in your life allows you to listen to yourself. Who would have guessed? Wow. But anyways, yeah, I just used weed to cope, to numb myself out when we broke up. And then I met my now boyfriend and he doesn't smoke weed at all. Ironically, he grows weed plants, but does not smoke or consume it at all. And when I say smoke weed, I also mean taking edibles. Edibles were my preferred source. And then I moved on to vape pens. Not a huge joint person. Frickin' hate the bong. Don't touch that shit. Probably never will. I was mostly edibles or a weed pen. So since he didn't smoke weed, I kind of stopped using it, just would use it less or by myself or just on weekends, things like that. And then eventually it kind of just tapered off because I didn't like being drowsy the next morning because weed hits me, like it hits me differently every time. It's so inconsistent. So sometimes I would sleep through my alarm and not be able to get up in the morning because I was still feeling the effects of it. I just felt very lazy. I binged ate, like just got the munchies like a motherfucker. And it was brutal because I could eat whatever. I could put down so much food and not even think about it. So then that also led me to feeling like shit the next day, just sluggish, tired, fatigued, all that jazz. And then yeah, fast forward, my drug addiction took off. So then my smoking weed also took off because I was so high on the drugs. I needed the weed to bring me back down and to ground me and, you know, just to get some come down a little bit. So then when the drugs stopped, I didn't rely on weed as much to bring me down. So then that kind of, my use decreased there as well. And then now being sober from alcohol, which leads me to the present day, I don't drink alcohol at all, don't use drugs at all. So then my weed, I just didn't really feel a need for it. Like it didn't, one half of the equation was missing. So then weed was just kind of left on its own and I didn't have a use for it, didn't need it to serve its purpose anymore, which kind of accidentally led me to being off of weed for the last month. And it is so great because when I would smoke, I would have no control over my eating. So now, especially at night, because it just became a habit, smoke, get high at night, binge eat until I'm so full, pass out, wake up, do it the next day. Like at my peak of using weed, I was probably high 4 or 5 times a week. 4 or 5 times out of the 7 days in a week. I don't know what I'm trying to say there. But yeah, like 4 or 5 out of the 7 days in a week, I was high. I feel high right now trying to say that sentence. I don't know what I'm trying to say. But yeah, I was high majority of the week. That's how I'd fall asleep. I had myself convinced that I couldn't fall asleep without that, which obviously that's not true. And I do believe weed has a use for people who do have it. Like it does serve its purpose. I do like CBD oils for like my muscles and stuff. I think that's great. When I say weed, I'm talking about THC. Probably should have prefaced that earlier, but whatever. And especially at my peak, it was so easy because now that it is legal, there are probably like at least 2 weed stores in every bigger city around me. So I can go to any city and have access to so much weed. But it's very, very expensive to buy it from a dispensary. So it was also hurting my bank account, how often I was using it. So that's why I also needed to cut back a little bit. But yeah, I'm on a weight loss journey. So it's very hard to lose weight when you're binge eating. So that's also partially why the weed had to go, because it was stopping me from reaching my goals. And I just want to be able to cope and to have these realizations without the weed. I'm not saying I'm never gonna smoke weed or consume it again, because I probably will. Like honestly, I do enjoy it sometimes, but just in moderation. I don't need to do it so often, and I wanna have a better handle on my eating so that I can enjoy weed without the repercussions of binging and consuming all of that food. But I feel great. I have so many goals that I want to achieve, and a lot of my goals mean I have to get up earlier, and I can't rely on myself to get up when I'm high because I would just pass out and sleep through my alarms. So if I want to make sure I can get up, then I can't smoke weed. And also just having a better nighttime routine, better sleep hygiene overall. Just unfortunately, I gotta give up weed right now, which it does suck, but when I would get so paranoid, it wasn't very enjoyable. Like I would just, like my skin would crawl. I wouldn't want to be around anyone. I would want to be so antisocial and just be by myself, which isn't a bad thing, but I couldn't, like, I want to be reliable for people. Like if someone were to need me and I'm high, that's one of my biggest fears actually, is being high and then some emergency happening and I'm not able to fulfill like an obligation or something to somebody if they were to need me. That's a huge fear of mine. And I just kind of like look at people differently and I look at life differently, and it was getting to be a bit of a dark place and I hated that. But anyways, yeah, so that's kind of my story, how I accidentally gave up weed for a month, and it's been great. I have been enjoying it because I am much more like consistent. I don't have the highs and lows in my life. I'm just like kind of flatlining, if you will, in the best possible way. Anyways, I have been rambling on for long enough about weed. I hope to have a better relationship with it at some point in the future. The last time I consumed weed was on 420, baby. So a month and a week ago-ish. But yeah, I had to celebrate that national holiday. But then after that, haven't consumed weed since, and I am loving my life. I am gonna continue not consuming weed for probably, like, I'm doing 75 hard right now, so probably throughout this duration, and then we'll see where I'm at after. But I'm not like setting a strict deadline for myself. I'm kind of just going with the flow. And that's one thing that I kind of struggle with, is if I set a certain rule or restraint or restriction on myself, it's like on my mind constantly, and I feel like I need it then even more. So like this last month has gone by so fast because I wasn't thinking about weed. I wasn't thinking about not smoking or not consuming it. So I was able just to go through my normal life. But now that I've had this realization, I hope it doesn't give me the urge to use it. I don't think it will. Like, I think I'm just gonna keep going through how I've been, and just see where it goes and how it goes and see how I'm feeling. But right now I'm feeling pretty good. I'm proud of myself and I'm happy. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.